Good evening, everybody. I'm trying to see how many are on the phone and it's not speaking to me. I don't know why we're not hearing you. I can't hear you. Can you guys hear me? Are we on the speakerphone? Doesn't seem to be working. Anybody there? Huh? Oh, good. You're not on my speakerphone. I don't know what's going on. Hang on a second. I'm not hearing you on the main phone. Now speak.
Rolling the frequency.
Okay, we got you now. All right, good. He wasn't playing that silly music, so I knew somebody was there, but I couldn't hear anybody. So last week we played with love and desires, and the three little sisters of desires, attachments, aversions, and attractions. So, I think tonight we're going to do the real one obstacle, which is, and I think it's going to be the last obstacle really. I think we've pretty much hit all the major ones. I know there's like 15 or 20 things on that list of stuff we thought we might talk about, but we started right at the business end of this rather than at the easy ones, and yeah, it doesn't seem like there's much sense spending a lot of time on some of the ones that are really pretty easy compared to what we've been doing. Obviously, the primary obstacle is the sense of personal self. And we all seem to default into that whenever we're not specifically focused on being in a transcendental consciousness. We find ourselves, well, when we're thinking, especially thinking personal self-thoughts. And Robert used to call it the I thought, and rather than the ego or the little self or something, he just called it the I thought, and that really says the whole thing. Personal sense, little I, is just a thought. And we held a class here probably 6 years ago called essentially, Who Would I Be If I Never Thought My Own Name or the Pronoun I? And that was the question, who would you be if you never thought I and never thought your own name? Who would you be? I is a little I. Whenever I say I now, I'm going to mean little I, unless I say specifically transcendental I or I self, myself or something. I is a conditioned concept that we're taught from infancy. Parents spend a lot of time teaching their babies to distinguish themselves from others. I often chuckle watching parents teaching their children, where's your nose? This is my nose, where's your nose? And teaching them very carefully to separate themselves from each other. And we learn the pronouns along with the language. And we also learn the verbs and the tenses along with the language. So by the time we can speak, which means by the time we're 1 or 2, we have a conditioned concept of an individual self that's programmed into us, that's never questioned, and well, as old as you are, that's how long you've been conditioned with it this lifetime. And of course, we brought in the propensity for that with us when we came in, because we've been doing this a long time. Whenever we think, well, let's start with the problems. Whenever all the other obstacles that we've discussed are a offshoot of I. This personal sense of I is the one that's in time. The personal sense of I is the one that's in space. I think I'm here, as distinct from universal or omnipresent. I think that time is passing and I am growing older because I'm associating with this body which appears to be growing older. And I think that that time is passing because I see days changing and such like, but it's all because I think I'm this body. I'm identified with this body. I was really very lucky when I must have been 5 or 6. That was the time that I was in a tree, and the branches, I was crawled out on a branch on a tree, and the branch was apparently rotten, and it fell. What I would swear today was probably 10 or 12 feet, which means it was probably 3 feet or 4 feet, because I was a very little boy. This was back in Elmhurst, so I was not yet 8. And I fell and it knocked the wind out of me. And I never had the wind knocked out. I couldn't breathe. And didn't know what it was and didn't have any parents or anybody there. My brother, I think, was there, but he, of course, was no help. And, I have a real clear remembrance of that because it was a shock. I wasn't afraid. I didn't have a concept of die. But I was shocked and I couldn't breathe and I was very disturbed, and the reason that was a gift is I still remember very clearly the I that I was then, the I that couldn't breathe. And there's no difference between that I and the I that I am now, okay? When I think I now, I'm talking about the same I. It's only when I think about it that I add embellishments like age or location or stuff like that. That I there and this I here are clearly the same I to me. Clearly they're linked. Clearly I see continuity from that one to this one. It was very clear that that particular I was me. And when I really look at it, there was a consciousness there, an awareness, and I was the right pronoun, but not little I. I was the right pronoun. There was an I-ness there, and there's an I-ness here, and they were identical. And it's only when I think that I move that I out of that consciousness, that awareness that was there, into I identify it with this body. When the little kid there thought, I can't breathe, he'd lost it. Because he was now in the little I. I can't breathe, I hope I breathe again. But the awareness of the little boy who couldn't breathe and the awareness of this fool who's sitting here talking is exactly the same awareness. And it was associated with that little body then, and it was associated with this bigger body now, both by mistake. The two bodies have nothing in common with each other. Not a single cell, not a single atom do they have in common with each other. There's not a single cell in the brain. There's not a single groove in the brain. There's nothing in common between this physical entity and that one. But I see a continuity between those two. That's part of the illusion. And the continuity that I see is always been associated with the I of different ages, at different places, at different stages, at different whatevers. And that's the I thought. The truth is that I, without the thought, without the association with that body, and this I, without the thought, without the association with this body, were the identical I, are the identical I, are the identical I to your I, are the only I. You know, there is one I, and it is this I that you are aware with right now, this I that I'm aware with right now. And it is the same I that I was back then, and that my brother was back then. And that I has no location. And the identical I, there's no sense of time. It's the identical, literally the identical I then and now. So that I has no time and it has no location. It has no boundaries unless I associate it with the body. It has no awareness of being omnipresent. This local version of it that's perceived right here, this local individualized awareness here, has no awareness of its totality and omnipresence. But nonetheless, it is the one I individualized here that is the same I that is individualized there. Robert used to call himself, the self, choiceless, effortless, pure awareness. And I used to just love that. It's got everything in it. Choiceless, effortless, pure awareness. Now, that would be without any thoughts. That would be just the awareness that has the potential to be aware of whatever's going on within it at every location. And everything that is going on within it, because anything that isn't within consciousness is not within consciousness, doesn't exist as far as we're concerned at least. And all this other stuff, Robert used to say that the entire universe is attached to the I thought. And I'm thinking, that's a pretty bold statement. I had no idea what he meant then. But if I'm thinking the I thought, then I'm attached to the physical body. And if I'm attached to the physical body, then I am seeing with the five material senses. And if I'm seeing with the five material senses, I'm seeing the universe that he's talking about, that obviously is attached to the I thought, or to the one that the I thought has assigned itself to. It's my body, this physical body, that sees the universe, that perceives the universe, that does the five senses thing. And there is no such universe. That universe is just a thought in mind. Just an image in mind. And I have to, if I'm associated with who I am, if I'm associated with the I that I am, then the universe is a thought in my mind. And if I'm associated with Lee, then I see stars out there, you know, and I see a universe out there, and it's real. So the I certainly is believing that I am the small I, does tie me to the universe. It makes possible all the desires and aversions and attractions and loves and hates and fears, because the fact that I think I'm this body is the only thing that gives any of the material world any reality to me. If I know who I am, none of that has reality. So all of that is based on the I thought. All my problems, you know, the mundane things, all my problems require being associated with this body. All my physical limitations, all my sicknesses, all my pains require my being associated with this body, identified with this body. And the I that's aware of this whole thing, of this talk that's going on right now, and of this body, and of I that's aware of the one who's associated with this body, is the I that I am, and that's the I that's omnipresent, that I am in fact always aware of. It's always right here. My problem has always been that I'm so busy thinking about Lee that I fail to notice who's thinking, or I fail to notice who's aware. I'm so busy concentrating on the little self, because I'm conditioned to do that, that I fail to notice the awareness itself that I am. And it's a very easy conditioning to maintain, because we all believe in cause and effect, because we're trained to believe in cause and effect, and we're conditioned to believe in cause and effect. And we all know, that know is in quotes, we all know that every effect has a cause. That's just the way we're conditioned to believe, that every effect has a cause. And therefore, when there are thoughts here, there has to be someone thinking. And since they're clearly not your thoughts, as I sit here in my physical body looking at your physical bodies with your separate brains, since they're clearly not your thoughts, they must be my thoughts, so I must be thinking them. And that's the real fundamental source of this continuity of I thought that has had me mesmerized for as long as I've been here.
Say that last statement again.
If there's a thought here, and if I'm identified with this body, then because I believe in cause and effects, and I believe that that thought has to have a source, and the only source I can find is me, because I'm sitting here in my body and I'm seeing you in your separate bodies with your separate brains, so I know you're not thinking it, and somebody has to be thinking that thought if there's a thought, I think. And so it has to be me. Okay? So the fact that there is thinking creates the illusion of there being a Lee, and Lee is nothing more than the continual, almost uninterrupted thinking that's been going on since that little boy fell out of the tree 60-some years ago to now. There's always been thinking going on, and Lee has always thought that it must be Lee thinking it, because Lee has always been associated with this body and therefore can conclude that nobody else can be thinking it. And so the conditioning that every effect has a cause forces me to think that every thought has a thinker, forces me to think that there's a Lee. And that's the underlying I thought structure that has maintained this illusion. Of course, it goes as far as doing. If there's any action, then there must, if there's a doing, then there must be a doer. And if it's my arm that moves, I must be the doer. So the fact that my arm is now flopping up and down in the chair arm must be me doing it. Okay? And here again is personal sense. Lee must be doing it. Robert used to tell us, I guess it was Ramana, that he used to raise his hand up in the air and put it down, and he said, and would tell them that before he came into this body, that movement was determined. But we have this illusion that we're thinking. Because there's thinking, we have the illusion that we're thinking. And because there's a doing, we have the illusion that we're a doer. So when the arm goes up and down, I think that I must be deciding to raise that arm, and I'm the one that raises it. And that's all part of this nonsense. I like David Hawkins' little picture about cause and effect. He shows a circle with an A in it, and it's got an arrow pointing to it, and then there's a circle with a B in it, and he's got an arrow pointing to it, and then there's a circle with a C in it. And he's saying that because of what appears to us as time, it looks like A caused B, A happened first, and we think that A caused B, which happened second, and then we think that B caused C, which happened third, because we see them in that sequence, and they're always related that way. Whenever we get an A, we get a B later, and whenever we have a B, we get a C later. And he then draws the picture of a higher thing above it, which has A and B and C, and the arrows between B and C, A and B, and the arrow between B and C. All five of those objects are all pointed to by this one cause up above, which is what is, okay? So the A and the B and the C and the cause that A causes B and the cause that B causes C are all an effect of what is, are all just a statement of what is, and there's no cause and effect there. It's just our sense of time sense that allows us to have that illusion. It's all already here. It's all already done. It's all one. There's no separateness. The other image I like is if you see a movie, and at the end of the movie the hero gets killed because somebody shoots him, our immediate conclusion is that the whole movie was the cause of the hero finally getting shot, and things that happened way back in the first scene, we can trace from the first scene how this whole thing unfolded, and how something that happened in the first scene caused something that happened in the second scene, caused something that happened in the third scene, and forward and forward and forward, until 2 hours later the hero got killed, and so it was that thing back at the first scene that caused the death, we think. But in fact, the author, when he sat down and wrote that book, wrote that movie, says, well, I think I'm going to have him killed in the last scene. Let's see, what could I write that would cause it? And so he wrote a scene in front of that, and a scene in front of that, and he keeps backing up and backing up and backing up and backing up and backing up until he finally writes the first scene, and he wrote the whole thing backwards because all he knew was he wanted to have the guy killed at the end. And so it was the result that caused the beginning rather than the beginning causing the result. And that's as reasonable a way to look at it as the other.
Isn't another way to look at it too? It's just,
Yeah, you need to use the phone. You're 20 feet from the speaker.
Isn't another way to look at it is that what is, since everything's infinity, we're always looking at it from a finite state. And so from a finite state, there is no cause because it would be infinity. So the infinity is what is, but we're always trying to look at it as a finite causality.
Yeah, the sense of time is because of the fact that because of the limitation, the obstacle of the little I.
Right.
It's really, little I sees time, but little I exists because of the fact that time, this level of consciousness sees time and sees time sequences. I was listening to a Herb tape 3 or 4 nights ago, and he was talking about the same sort of thing. His point was that he was talking about the Christ body as compared to the human body, and the Christ mind as compared to the human mind. And he was essentially getting people ready. It's the preparation tapes for the Orlando seminar, which we have now, which you all maybe want to hear. Those of you who like the 40 Days in the Wilderness, these are the 6 preparation tapes for that he sent out the year before. And his point is that if you're in the physical body, you can't be in the Christ mind. Because if you are, then Christ, because if you're in the Christ mind, you're in the Christ body. You are the transcendental being. And I don't like the word body, but if you're being the human being, your thoughts are human thoughts. And if you're in the transcendental thoughts, then you're in the transcendental being. But you can't be in the human body having transcendental thoughts. They order to be having transcendental thoughts, you're necessarily in the transcendental being, which is another nice statement about the limitation of being a human being, and another nice statement that you can't think your way into transcendental consciousness, because the thinker is the personal sense, is the limitation, is the problem. Right now, we're all conscious, we're all aware, we're all aware of the choiceless, effortless, pure awareness that we are. It's also what we call the silence. At least that's my experience of it. My experience of this choiceless, effortless, pure awareness is it's the silence. And it's here right now. And it's here right now for all of us. And if you're not aware of it right now, it's because you're looking too close. You're zeroed in on what's going on inside the choiceless, effortless, pure awareness. It's the awareness that was aware of the boy falling out of the tree. It's the awareness of the whatever this is sitting in this chair talking. It's the awareness that's sitting in that chair listening. The most phenomenal thing is that it has individualized, and yet it's the one awareness. It's aware that it has individualized, and it's aware of all the individualizations, and it's aware of everything that's going on within all the individualizations. Thoughts that are going on here now are authorless, sourceless, there's no one thinking these thoughts. There's no one who is the choiceless, effortless, pure awareness. There's just the choiceless, effortless, pure awareness. Just the awareness. No one is that awareness. That awareness is the one. And no one is aware here. This awareness is that same awareness. tape that I was listening to, that Herb tape, he was suggesting that we go back to the Joel's suggestion many, many years ago about 30 10-second meditations each day to remind yourself, find a way to remind yourself 30 times a day of the I that you really are. To stop every 15 minutes or every 20 minutes and just for 10 seconds stop and remember that I am this consciousness, I am this awareness. I'm not the Lee that is apparently aware through his five senses. I am this awareness of Lee being aware through his five senses. At the moment, that's what this awareness, one of the things this awareness contains is the awareness of what Lee is seeing through his eyes. But just to take that step back from thinking that I'm Lee looking through my eyes to thinking that I am the awareness that is aware of what Lee is seeing through his eyes and hearing through his ears and thinking and all those things. And you know, I can feel that awareness. It's the same as feeling the present. It's the same as feeling the silence. But just to back out, just for 10 seconds, 30 times a day was his proposal, and he was having the gang do it. I suspect it's going to go on for the last 3 months before the Orlando seminar. But that seems like a good exercise to play with. It's easy for me because my computer can be made to beep every 15 minutes. So that's the device I use when I'm sitting at home. I have a gong that gongs every 15 minutes, which I've been playing with for the past couple of days. So that's a fun game to play, and we could all do that. I'm sure it will get quicker, and it will also get deeper, and it will tend to break the habit of always defaulting back to the little I, to pull yourself out of that lie 30 times a day. Would be a worthwhile exercise. Are there any questions or comments or discussions or feedback or?
I found that your exercises that we've been doing have kind of kept you in that conscious. I found that these exercises you've been doing have kind of kept that throughout the day. You're looking at every motive, it's kind of keeping you in that.
Yeah, that was a good one.
It's a great one.
That one of checking your motives.
It's like almost like it's almost like what Anthony Robbins, it sets a neurolinguistic link, so it just kind of put a shunt in there, so everything kind of hits that. So what's my motive? What's my motive?
But now we want to take a step a little bit further back, because that's the wrong me.
Right.
Robert recommended self-inquiry, and I know a couple of people have been playing with versions of that, and that's a really good game to play, and it works. It's consistent with this every 15-minute, 10-second meditation, because this is a 10-second or less reminder. Robert has a rather long procedure. It seems like a long procedure that he goes through. You know, he says, when you find yourself thinking, ask yourself who's thinking, and then when you get an answer, I'm thinking, then ask who's I. Who's this I who thinks he's thinking? And that process is that when you ask, well, who is this I that's thinking, there will be a silence there for a short period of time, perhaps only for a second, maybe for 5 or 10 seconds, but there'll be a silence there before that mind thing says something again. And but that very quickly for me resulted in my just being able to say who to anything that's going on. If there's a desire coming up, who has the desire? If there's an aversion, who has the aversion? If there's pain, who has the pain? If there's sickness, who has sickness? If there's a problem, who has the problem? If there's a seeker, who's seeking? That's well, for me it was a very powerful tool, because it got very quickly to where when I became aware of anything, when I was aware that I was thinking, or aware that anything was going on, emotion, like if you have, it's great for kid work. When the glitch comes up, who has the glitch? Whenever emotion or a reaction was happening, reaction is the right word. Whenever I would start to have a reaction, I would just immediately ask who's having this reaction, and it would stop it. Okay, it stops the thought, it stops the whatever's going on. It just, this is after practicing this for a few months, but it got to where just saying who would stop it, would stop whatever it was. So that's one result of this kind of practice. And saying who, if you get to notice every 15 minutes that you're thinking, or in the middle of something, ask yourself who it is that's there. The point is that every 15 minutes or every 20 minutes or however often you do it, identify the correct I. Break the association with the small I, who's the one who's reacting, who's the one that's thinking, who's the one who thinks he's thinking, or the one who thinks he's seeing, or the one who thinks he's having an experience. Yeah. Use the phone. Talk into the phone, please. That's our microphone, since we don't have a speakerphone.
Sure. Yeah, this is Chris.
Hey, Chris.
I guess what I heard from you tonight was that everything's been hatched, that it's already been done, or it's already been. You were raising your arm up and down, and so that was already a predisposition. It was something that was going to happen.
Preordained, yeah.
Preordained, yeah.
Sure.
And it's just brought up something for me, which is in this little I's life called Chris, I've had sort of precognitive moments or dreams where they're like signposts where I went, oh, I've already been here, or oh yeah, I had that dream 6 months ago, and it's exactly the same thing as what I'm experiencing now. So here I am, sort of like Back to the Future. So what helps me is now do a lot more observing and separating out, myself from everything that's going on, and seeing it a little more clearly now.
Yeah. The point is to get that distinction. And the right question is always who. Who's separating out? Who's having the experience? Who's having precognitive? Who had this dream 6 months ago? Do you see all these statements, all of our talking, anything we can say, all of it assumes the existence, the reality of this little I, of this personal sense. Raising my hand and lowering it assumes that there's somebody that can do it. The immediate assumption is Lee raised his hand. I remember the first time I used. I I was smoking dope for the first time with a friend who was a dope smoker, and I wasn't getting it. I mean, I was smoking dope, incredible amounts of dope, and I didn't know what to look for, and I was so busy looking for it, I was missing the whole experience, And actually, we were smoking hash, not marijuana, so there was an experience going on, and I'm trying like hell to have the experience, and he says, "Lee, where's your arm?" And I looked around, my arm was up, really straight up behind me somewhere, I'm looking all around, I can't find my arm, At which point he breaks into laughter, and I look up and I see my hand straight up in the air, and I broke into laughter, and of course, at that moment, there was a breakthrough, and I was totally stoned and experienced it, enjoying thoroughly. I remember listening to, there was Beatles music on it, really quite wonderful. But there was the first case where my arm was raised, and it clearly wasn't I that raised it. So I've always had that working example. Sometimes when the arm goes up, it's not Lee that raised it. And that night certainly was not. Lee was totally stoned, and the arm went up on its own entirely. So let's all get stoned tonight and see what happens to him. No, that's a different group. Floor is open. Or not. Silence is nice too.
But there is no arm.
Image in mind. Who sees it?
This is Bridget.
Hi, Bridget.
When I look at the eye thought, and I look at the kid script work, and the asking is so tightly wound into that thought that we can't free ourselves enough to get out of the I thought? Is that so? Sometimes we do work in the I thought.
Well, that's the story. I mean, the kid work and all of that is at one level, and it's at the level of the personal I, and that work is all being done by the personal I, the personal sense of the I, and we have all sorts of stories about that seem to be consistent with the Leelaa unfolding, but all of that is in time, and it's all sequential, and it's all has the implication of cause and effect, and it all has the implication of a personal self that is doing all that. So I mean, what you said is correct in that context, but and our experience is that until you've put out that fire, the kid fire, you're not going to be able to disassociate yourself from the personal I, because there's that part of you, so to speak, that is, based in, that's completely fear-based. Barbara was really right about the list of all the things that we love, hate, fear, and desire being the list of things that are tying us to our humanhood, that are tying us to the little I. But do you see that whole story assumes that there is a little I? But that's how it looks. I mean, the way the Leelaa looks is that what is individualized itself and went stupid and is bringing itself back up from totally ignorant to transcendental consciousness. That's what the story looks like. The story looks like the veil descended and some part of the individualization is being permitted to go through the experience from total ignorance back to transcendental consciousness. That's what the story looks like. But throughout that entire story, there is still the individualization, the spiritual being that's having the human experience, and it's just the human experience that apparently goes from ignorance to transcendence. And it's that human experience that is the personal I sense. And that's all part of the Leelaa, and even while that's taking place, the spiritual being that's having the human experience is existent, and that spiritual being is the individualization of what is. And the choiceless, effortless, pure awareness is pervades the entire thing. It's true of what is, it's true of the individual experience. Everything is in fact choiceless, effortless, pure awareness, and everything appears to be taking place within that. Did that add sufficient more confusion to it, or should I keep talking?
No.
That's plenty? Okay, good.
I'm just curious about the principle of secrecy and experiences. Could you talk a little on that? Because I question whether is it something that an experience that can sustain itself, or is it sort of, does it come and go depending on is there, can there be such a height of excitement that I thought can kind of cast a shadow upon it once again, and until the I thought until you really have dominion over that?
Except who has dominion?
Well, until the mind stops.
Yeah, or until it's not paid attention to.
Paid attention to.
Until there's no longer the thought that there is a personal I. When that thought stops, then it doesn't matter what else is going on, because there's no one, no individual, no personal I that's affected by it. Robert was delightful because Robert went through, when I was with Robert so much, Robert had the same experiences that we had. We used to say, Robert, what do you see? And he says, I see the same thing you see, or I couldn't function, He had the same input, he had the same experiences, he wandered around, his experiences were all the same. He was going through the same stuff that we were. He was showing up to give satsang once or twice a week and all that stuff. But what was amazingly clear about Robert is that there was nobody there. There was absolutely no sense of personal self ever. There was no I thought. There was never an I thought in Robert. Okay?
How did you get that from?
Huh?
How did you get that from observing Robert?
I was with him 3 times a week for 6 or 7 years and having lunch with him and watching this, and it became very clear that there was absolutely no editor there, no editing going on, the words coming out of his mouth, it was just, I knew it. Just being in his consciousness, there's no question in my mind that there was nobody there. And that's happened to many people, I see the same thing in Byron Katie, and I see the same thing in several other people I've been with. Nobody home.
I hear what you're saying. I hear now what you're saying. I hear you.
What has to go is the thought that there's something that has to go. What has to go is the I thought.
Right, that's the personal sense of self, the I thought, no matter if it shows up as a kid, if it shows up as a version, whatever. Any thought that is that's associated to the little I, the I thought, is the last to go.
Absolutely, and it's what obscures the I that I am, because when the volume of the little I, of the I thought, the volume of the thought that there's this I, the volume of I chasing itself and thinking all this stuff and looking at the universe and being excited and all that stuff, that volume is so huge that there is no chance of noticing the silence that is omnipresently surrounding all of that, okay? That's why it's so important for us to learn to experience the silence. That's why that's the final step in the awareness exercise, to become aware of the silence. And once you're able to become aware of the silence, then you can be aware of the fact that that silence is omnipresent, that it's always here. Anytime you look for the silence, there it is. Anytime you look for consciousness, there it is. How can you be consciousness if consciousness isn't here? It's always here. This awareness is always here because I'm aware, always, So, but we never take that step back. We always are focused on the Li and never focused on on the awareness that's aware of the Li and all of its 5 senses and its babbling head and everything else, okay? And how active the Li is determines the obscurity of the silence. So it's just a huge fog.
But why was Robert tuned that way and not, say, Chris?
Beats me. Robert had this great awakening when he was 14, but undoubtedly as a result of lots of work in lots of previous lifetimes,
Yeah.
Why we're at different stages and why different people are where they are is just what is, It's not like, the question is not why was he like that and Chris like this. The question is why am I like that there and I like this here? Because it's the same I. It's the one consciousness. It's the one I. The minute you say why is he that way and I'm this way, you're making the error of identifying with the little I. The fact is, what is doing what it's doing infinitely. And it's doing it differently in every place, and so everybody appears to have a different story. Every individualization appears to have a different story. But it's just the great Leelaa. That's the great game. That's why I like the term Leelaa. That's the play.
Right, yeah. It brings up the story in one of the herb tapes when he talks about Melchizedek not having any processes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that really stuck with me because that's exactly the same thing you're saying about Robert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And me going, Dad, why do I have these processes?
And yet you don't.
And I don't.
Yeah.
But then why do I believe and see that or think in my little self?
Here comes the question, who? Why does who think that?
The little lie. My little self.
Yeah, why does who think that?
That's like who's on first.
Mm-hmm. The good news is it's already done. You came out perfectly.
Yeah. So they say the grass is greener over there.
Narcissagata explains that really well, though. The way, the difference between me and you is nothing, except your world is everything.
Thank you, Bridget.
Sorry, Bridget. When Narcissagata says, the guy asks, what's the difference between me and you? And Narcissagata says the difference between me and you is that your world occupies 100% of you, and only a fraction of me. And I thought that was beautiful because we're so focused on everything, he's focused on nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Or not focused, so I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, Robert never thought that body was him.
Yeah.
And he never thought that he should watch what he said. That's what I used to watch. It was what he would say to people. And, it was absolutely unedited and uncensored. It just came out. And it was very clear that he was as startled by what he said as I was sometimes. It just, nobody was writing that stuff. It was just happening. It was just very clear in him. And I had that experience a lot. For years, when I walk with people, I find out where they're at spiritually by watching what comes out of my mouth. Because my mouth talks at the appropriate level. I don't figure out where they are spiritually and decide what to say. I figure out where they are spiritually by watching what I say.
Yes.
Okay?
But isn't that true of all of our interactions? And that's why we have different dialogues with different people in our lives.
Yeah, but most of us think that we're evaluating the situation beforehand and deciding what to say. And of course, when we do that, we invariably misevaluate the situation. Robert would hear the same, many times he was asked the same question 2 or 3 times at the same satsang and gave 3 totally different answers, which were often mutually contradictory. But the fact was that they were the appropriate answer to take at the level of the questioner, the answer was the right answer to move him to the next step, the next piece of understanding. And since all the questions were nonsense and all the answers were lies, they didn't need to be consistent. What they needed to do was point him in the direction to take the next step. And so it was fun watching that. And I'm sure it was not possible that Robert could have figured, he did not figure that out.
Yeah.
The right words happened at the right level to take the next step. And it was just so clear that that's what was happening.
Lee,
Yeah.
I think you said that Herb was getting to that point of telling his students that, suggesting it to him. Did Joel ever get to that point of teaching his students that?
I have no idea. I've never had any personal encounters with Joel.
In any of his tapes that you've heard? The books you've read?
What you hear is his students. You hear in all of his tapes what the students that were at that class could hear. And the same for her. And that is not, does not tell us how high Joel was. It tells us how high his class was. Now we have lots of very good evidence about how high Joel was. I mean, there is some real evidence.